Welcome to our second ever Shaws Talk, our webinar series, the ASA Expert Series. Today we are going to be discussing how to help ease your child back into preschool. My name is Dana Newman. I am the Enrollments Manager here at Shaws Preschool. I have a bit of history with Shaws, although I am not in the education profession. I did send two of my own children through Shaws, and they absolutely loved it, as did our family. I think with preschools especially, we are entrusting the schools with our most precious possession, really, which is our children. So it really does need to be a partnership. Being on the other side of things now, I'm continually impressed with how much research and planning and thought goes into the curriculum here at Shaws. The most recent example would be our home-based learning very recently, which was an entirely new way of facilitating learning. Now pivoting back to, of course, being back into school. Our guest today, Imeelia, is actually the driving force behind all of it. What we're going to do today, I'll just give you a brief outline, is we are going to hear Imeelia's thoughts. Then we will have a brief question and answer session at the end. So if you do have questions that pop up while you're watching, please go ahead and use the chat function to send them through, and then we'll go ahead and go through them at the end. As mentioned, today's topic is helping ease your child back into preschool. And we have with us today Ms. Imeelia Ismail-Tan, Curriculum Director of Shaws Preschool. A lot of you may recognize Imeelia from our annual parent curriculum meetings, where she shares the curriculum outline for each year level, along with developmental milestones and lots of interesting information. So Imeelia started her career in early childhood 17 years ago as a preschool teacher. She holds a Master of Education in Early Childhood from University of South Australia. And throughout her career in this industry, she has held various teaching and leadership positions, both locally and overseas. Imeelia is especially passionate about curriculum development and teacher training. So for the past 7 years, she has been responsible for these areas at Shaws. A self-proclaimed play advocate, she believes in play-based approach to education because it is respectful to children, how they learn, how they develop, and how they naturally are. So Imeelia, good morning.
Hi, thank you, Dana. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being with us today. This morning is a lovely morning. I think it's a good time for us to gather and talk a little bit about what's happening, right? So these are interesting times for us, and even more so for our young children. They have just had months of being at home with us, with minimal interaction with anyone outside of the immediate family, and very, very limited opportunities to be out of the home, really. But now, as we come out of the circuit breaker and places in our neighborhoods and communities are beginning to open up, we are facing yet another major transition, which is heading back into preschool. So I feel it's timely for us to spend a little bit more time together this morning to talk about what our children are facing and how we can help them.
What are some of the challenges in your experience that children are going through during this transition period?
They are actually going through plenty, yeah. I think this special period of back to school after circuit breaker, we have different reactions from different children. In preschool, we've had probably the longest break that we've ever had. Yeah. During Leanne's talk last Tuesday, she mentioned some challenges that children are facing during the circuit breaker period. And those are things like loss of routine, loss of social interaction, loss of undivided attention, and also fear, or picking up on the fear of the people around them. But now that the children are going back into preschool, they might be facing a new set of challenges. Now, after staying at home for 8 weeks, almost 8 weeks, some of them may be really eager to join their peers, right? They miss their friends, they miss their teachers, but some others might already be firmly settled into a stay-home kind of routine that might be difficult to shake off. So they might be stressed about restarting the routine life of school all over again. For many children, they've been accustomed to a new normal, staying home pretty much all day, seeing empty parks and playgrounds when they do go out. The shops are closed, the roads are quiet, seeing people wearing masks, armed with hand sanitizers, and so on. So they will need time to unlearn this desocialization and inactivity as well. So in a sense, it's having to re-socialize with their friends, with their teachers. And now it is compounded by the fact that they have to socialize at a distance, right? And sometimes without getting the full picture of their friends' facial expressions because we're all in masks. And yet others might even have fears about being teased, about being isolated, or about not having done any of their home-based learning activities, not having attended any of the Zoom lessons with their friends. So there are plenty of challenges, worries, and concerns that our children are facing at the moment.
Thank you, Amy. And also true. What are some of the things that Shaws is doing in particular to help ease them back into preschool? And as parents, what are some of the things we can do for them at home?
Definitely. Okay, so I would like to frame my sharing today over 6 key points. And as you will see, these 6 things are not actually discrete. They will all overlap one another. But for the ease of discussion, I've pulled them out into 6 sort of labels so that hopefully we can remember easily. Now, the first thing is expectations. Think about your expectations of the transition as parents, right? I'm not saying to lower your expectations of yourself or of your child. Rather, I'm suggesting that you reframe your expectations. Now, your family has been through a challenging time, and so has mine, right? You've had to juggle a number of things like balancing work and time for the family, attention for the children. Some of you might have had some financial concerns. Some of us might have worried about getting sick, genuinely. And some of us might have not been able to see our elderly parents. Now, many of us have family members overseas. So we might have had to deal with that challenge of canceling travel plans and so on. Now, even very young children can sense when there is stress in the home. Now, in their own little ways, your child has dealt with this period of changes and have more or less reached a healthy equilibrium. But now they are encountering yet another big transition, which is going back into preschool. So the stress adds up again. So the first key thing is to remind ourselves as parents, as educators, this is not a regular back to school transition. So we should not expect it to be the same. Now, I'm a parent as well. So while we look forward to school restarting, and I'm sure the children do too, we cannot and we must not expect life to instantly snap back to normal. We shouldn't expect a seamless process. Some children will find it, understandably, more difficult to assimilate to school life. And we need to accept that there might even be some regression, like separation anxiety, like social anxiety, or discipline issues. If your child has just gone through, say, toilet training in the early part of the year, right now, you might find that they might experience some leaks, some accidents, yeah? And this is not because your child has unlearned these skills. It's just that a lot of their mental and cognitive facilities are right now used to deal with the social and emotional changes. And I think it is important for us to acknowledge that they've been through this scary time. So what do we do when we see such regressions or behavioral changes? Now, the great thing is, like I mentioned earlier, they already have the skills. You've taught them the skills. They've been through it before. You know this. So you don't have to reteach anything. For example, if it's toilet training, like all you have to do actually is to talk through the process, remind them that they've done it before and they can do it. So it's also important to be encouraging every step of the way, say things like, hey, it's okay, we all have boo-boos sometimes, we make mistakes, but you've done this before and I know you can do it, let's try it again, and sooner or later, this conversation that we keep repeating again and again becomes their inner voice. And that's assuring for them. And they will talk themselves through any kind of challenges. And then when you do see some progress or development, celebrate it. Give them encouragement, praise them, no matter how small. Yeah, I think that's important. The second big thing is routine. Now that we have reframed our expectations of how the transition will be, let's look at easing them back into school, the routine of school. if you can, a week or two before your child starts back in school, start preparing them for the upcoming transition. Get them back into the school routine, such as maybe setting realistic bedtimes, get them to pack their school bags with you, select or pick out what we're going to have for breakfast tomorrow, run it down. You could also walk by the school, drive by the school, talk to your child about drop-off, about signing in. And now the drop-off routine will be a bit different, right? So we will include things like lining up at a distance from one another. We've got to scan in the entry codes with our phones and so on. So talk through these things with your child. It will help them. Quite a number of our parents shared with us that a couple of weeks before school was to reopen, they drove over just past the school for the children to look at the school. And quite a few also drove by because the children asked to see the school. They just missed the physical building so much. And that's really nice to know. Now for us at Shaws, we're very lucky that most of our children have been interacting and connecting with their friends over Zoom and online lessons. So they've been rather well connected to the school community, to the classmates. But if you have yet to send your children back to school, maybe what you could do is to arrange a virtual play date with one or more friends before you start. I think having the presence of familiar faces, having something common to talk about will definitely help them. Another thing is, this might seem quite obvious, but waking up and eating breakfast closer to the usual school routine, I think will really help your child to feel rested so that they're ready to cope with the new routines and challenges. I mean, as adults, we also sometimes need a dry run of our new routines as well. So in my household, I've got 3 children, and they were all due to start school at different times. But we just took the earliest one, and we simulated going out of the house, all of them going back to school and all of us going out to work, just so that we can slowly get used to the routine, the timings, even the route that we are taking towards school. Another thing is, I think because coming back to school in itself is a big change, right? Try and keep the other changes to a minimum. Maybe allow your child to bring in a familiar item, like a favorite book or a favorite toy that he's been loving at home. Allow him to bring it to school just to have it with him. For some children, they might still want to watch the recorded video lessons at home, even though physically they're coming to school. So maybe you could give them some doses of that. Allow it every now and then to watch a pre-recorded video that they've had during home-based learning, because that was what's familiar to them throughout the 8 weeks. Now, wherever possible, try and involve your child in making decisions. It could be really small decisions like choosing the snack to pack for school, planning the route to school if possible, and so on. Because when you allow them to make these small decisions, it helps them feel like they have more control over the situation. It could also be something as simple as choosing a favorite hand sanitizer, right? Like in my house, it's the special lavender one. I think it also helps to give the children time to ease back into the routine of school, and also break unwanted habits that they might have picked up at home, like late nights or lots of snacking, staying in bed, or even extended screen time. Give them time to break out of those habits. At the end of the day, though, recognize that there's so much that we can control, there's so much that we can leave and change, but really we have to believe and trust that our children are tougher than we think. Yeah, your child's resilience will take care of the rest.
Thank you, Imeelia. Such good reminders. We all know and we hear how important routine is, but I think as parents, especially during this time, it's so nice. We really appreciate the specific examples. So thank you for that. So we've heard about expectations and routine. What's next, Imeelia?
I think this applies to everyone in every kind of situation, and that's communication. And for us, especially, I think we want to think about communicating with our children with respect and understanding. Now, over the past few months, many of them have unconsciously or subconsciously carried more worries than they have the words for, right? They might have a lot of these feelings and emotions that they cannot describe. And now you see them bravely coming into school. We've been getting children coming in phases, right, over the past couple of weeks. And they look so brave and happy and confident, wearing their masks, they make it look so easy. And this is amazing because it really shows us how resilient they can be. But as adults, I think we also need to be careful to observe, to listen, and sometimes help to draw out these hidden emotions out of the children if they don't know how to verbalize it themselves. So if they do have worries and questions, listen and answer them honestly. Try and answer as accurately and realistically as possible, and not give empty assurances such as it's okay, it'll be fine. Because that might be confusing to children. Like, mom says it's okay, but I don't feel so okay inside. So that's confusing, right? So instead of saying, don't worry, it's okay, and brush them off, instead what we might say is, yes, I know this seems difficult now, but I'll be here to help you get through this. Let's talk about what we can do to make things better. So what you're doing is validating your children's feelings, because if you don't, it will be harder for them to open up to you about such feelings in future, and you don't want that. Some children might be really fearful of the virus, understandably, right? They might be scared of getting sick because they think about or they associate it with having to go to the hospital, having needles poked in, being taken away in an ambulance. Listen to their worries. Let them talk through it. And don't trivialize their fears. Acknowledge it, and then affirm your child that you're right to feel this way. But at the same time, assure them that they are in a position of power to fight against the virus, as long as they put on their masks, they wash their hands often, and remember their social distancing, right? So instead of saying, oh, you have nothing to be afraid of, it might be better to say, yes, I know it might feel scary when people talk about the virus, but if you remember all the things that we've taught you and your teachers have taught you, it would be very, very difficult for the virus to come anywhere near you. Something like that would be a bit more realistic. Now, I feel that for older children, maybe your 6 or 7-year-olds, it's also fair for you to discuss what could happen if they do fall sick, right? So you might tell them, yes, you might get sick, but if that happens, the doctors and the nurses, they know exactly what to do to help you. I'll be there with you, and you will get better. Still in communication, talking about the school routines is important. Like for us in Shaws, actually 2 weeks before the children were due to come back to school, the teachers started wearing masks in their virtual lessons, and they centered their lessons around mask knowledge and being comfortable with mask, safe distancing measures, hand washing. So we read stories together. We tried putting on the mask together. It's important to teach the children how to put on the mask properly and how to take it off safely as well. So we had them bring in their stuffed toys, and they put the little masks around the teddy bear. So that was fun. And it set the basis for everyone. So masks became our new normal. Okay. Also, help your child to focus on the positive. Getting to see their friends and teachers, getting to run about in the school playground, getting to even put on shoes for children who have been at home all the time, right? Or going on the bus. So all these are things that children can be excited about. So tap on these things. Remind your child to think about the positive little bits about going to school, and that can help them perhaps to distract from their worries and eventually overcome their worries. Also, communication with the school. I think that's important. When you have worries, it's very important that your school listens, right? So as schools and public places start to open, you might have some concerns about how the schools are managing the safety and hygiene procedures. So talk to your children's or your child's teacher, talk to the principal to find out from them what are the procedures that they have in place. Yeah. So that's communication. Now, the fourth thing is my favorite thing in the world, right? And that's play. We believe that play is the children's most natural way of being, right? So in school, in Shaws, we use pretend play, we play games, role play, puppet play, dramatic play. And we use these to bring up discussions or to draw out the children's feelings, to discuss some of the things they're curious about, their worries, and we tap on that as a platform to help them learn, by example, perhaps, how to deal with their worries or challenges in healthy ways. We also use songs, stories, and this helps children to experience situations vicariously. So they learn about how the characters overcome their challenges. And of course, play is therapeutic, right? So a healthy dose of play always helps children to expend their energy. It helps them to self-soothe and find calm, amongst others. I could go on and on about benefits of play, but I think that's another talk altogether. At home, parents, build up your arsenal of different types of play. This is your weaponry, right? So we've got things like dramatic play, musical play, physical play, so many different types of play. And think about how you can use these play experiences to help your child overcome the transition.
Thanks, Imeelia. It's so amazing. Before I met Imeelia, I had no idea that there are this many types of play, right? As a parent, I always loved messy play because I love that the kids could get messy at school and have fun, and then they wouldn't get the house messy. But I always love seeing all of these examples of all the different types of play and the benefits. So thanks, Imeelia. Okay, what's next?
Okay, so the next thing is to think about yourselves, adults, as role models, because children watch their parents and children are really perceptive, right? So try and manage your own emotions about your kids going back into school. So if you appear overly anxious, your child will pick up on it, and then it could contribute to their own anxiety. They might not have been anxious about anything, but they see mom and dad worrying about something and it gets them, okay, what's happening here? So it's important for us to try our best to be positive, or at least to show them that you're being positive. But at the end of the day, I think if you do have challenges and you do have stress, sometimes it's also good to show them that you're facing it. Show them how you're dealing with it. So communicate with them about what you're doing and how it's helping you, because this will help your children build on their own coping mechanism. So say, for example, if you've had a very long Zoom session, something that was really, really tough to deal with, take a break, right? And tell your child, okay, mommy needs to take a break. I need to go and make myself a cup of coffee and take a breather. I'm not suggesting that you give your children coffee, but if they see that there are ways for you to overcome your own stress, it really helps them to think about, hey, next time if I feel a bit anxious and I have this butterfly in my tummy, I can take a break. We can go downstairs, take a walk, or we can go and play a game, take your mind off it, and then we can come back and tackle it again. So showing your child how you are controlling your own stress will help them. That becomes their coping mechanism in the future. And then don't forget to reinforce the positive by letting your child know how proud you are of them, how they're making good choices as they head back into school. Now, my last point, the sixth point, is about the curriculum. And I think this is something that's been playing in the minds of many, many parents, right? Myself included, especially since the children have been out of school for 2 months. Parents, you may celebrate the reopening of school as a return to normalcy. But instead of rushing to catch up on lost time or lost curriculum or loss of learning, perhaps it will help if we all focus on the emotional needs of our children during this period of transition first. Okay, now, even with masks and social distancing in place, we're very blessed that our teachers in Shaws, they put in so much effort. They're such a wonderful bunch. They put in so much effort to welcome the children back with warmth, put the children at ease about being in school. And that may mean that they will spend time, a little more time, on the social and emotional side of learning. And that's okay, because if we want our children to learn, they have to feel safe first. I think that's a priority for now. The learning will come later. Now, in Shaws, what we've also done is we've looked at the rest of the year and we've rehashed the academic calendar. So instead of a holiday program in June, we've planned an enrichment come revision program over 6 weeks. So what this means is over the 6 weeks, we will focus on checking in on the children. We observe and assess where they're at after 8 weeks of home-based learning. We plan tasks and activities that will help us check for understanding. And then we spend time reinforcing the skills and concepts so that children can internalize them and apply them. We believe in differentiated learning. And we recognize that the children will come back from circuit breaker not having the same kind of experiences, not having learned the same thing at exactly the same time. So they will have different experiences, they will have different outcomes. So we believe that this 6-week revision period will really help children who need more face-time support and perhaps more hands-on application. And for children who have already mastered those skills and concepts, and fantastic, we will challenge them even further. So in summary, our curriculum will continue in that fashion, where we will have consistent check-ins to see how the individual children are doing. We boost our efforts in teaching children and help them understand through different modes. Of course, we inject lots of play to keep them happy, to keep them stimulated and engaged. And we communicate with you closely along the way, their progress, their development, as well as if there are a few areas that they need a little bit more work on or a little more time with, we will communicate that with you. And I guess our objective for doing this is to mitigate or to neutralize the effects of the altered learning mode over the 8 weeks, such that we come out of it as if it didn't happen at all, from a learning and teaching perspective, that is. Now, having said all that, I think it's also important to realize that whilst we try as much as we can to make the transition as easy as possible for our kids, a little anxiety and stress is normal, healthy even, right? I think having that sense of unsettledness, having butterflies in their tummy is actually really good to build resilience in our children.
Thank you, Imeelia. Okay, so to summarize, your suggestions for managing the transition back into preschool are reframing our expectations of the transition and our expectations of how our child's going to snap back into action there. Talking through our routine. The routine's really important.
Yes.
Communication is really important with the children. Using play as a tool and how helpful that can be to help with their worries and their curiosities about what's going on. Adults, how we can be role models for them. And curriculum, the learning and development portion of what's going on at school. Thank you very, very much for all of that, Imeelia. So right now what we're going to do is go into the question and answer period. Thank you very much. We've had a lot of people send in questions, so we're going to see how many we can get through. If we aren't able to do that just yet, then we will come back to you privately about that. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's see here. Okay.
We have time for questions, right?
Yes. Okay. You mentioned that it is normal for children to have anxiety when coming back to school. How do I know if my child has a bigger problem that needs external help?
Okay, this is a good question. Now, I think it's normal for all children to have some form of anxiety, and most of them will overcome it sooner than we think. But I would just like to add a disclaimer that there are some red flags to look out for. So say, for example, I think the first one is if your child's anxiety or stress is causing a great deal of distress. Tantrums is normal, but say, for example, if your child refuses to sleep by himself or herself, refuses to do anything without you, that can be worrying. Another thing is if your child suddenly stops getting along or communicating with immediate family members. So if your child stops talking to you, stops playing with his or her siblings, okay, that's another red flag. If normal routine activities are avoided, so routine activities like meals, like shower, if sleep becomes difficult, that's also another red flag. If there are any persisting physical symptoms like headaches, stomach aches, vomiting even, if your child is extremely lethargic or fatigued, that might be another red flag. Now, if any of these symptoms, I think, last beyond, say, the first few weeks of coming to school, I would say the benchmark is 1 or 2 weeks. Anything that persists for 3 or 4 weeks, I feel that might need further attention or intervention.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, we've got another question here. We are really quite stressed and worried at home. My husband and I feel like we might let our daughter stay home a little longer. What would you advise?
Okay. Now, I completely understand this because I've had these thoughts myself. But for me personally, I decided against it. I decided against keeping my children at home for a longer period of time. And it's got nothing to do with missing curriculum or anything like that. More importantly, I think if you were to think from your child's perspective, the anxiety will be worse if she goes back to school, say, a month later, and all of her friends have been in for a month, they've settled back in, and she might feel a little left out. And socially, it will be harder for her to fuse herself back in when everyone else is already used to the new routines, the new measures like safe distancing, wearing masks, and all that. So I would strongly suggest for you to just send her back after having tried all of these tips and looking at the 6 key points, right? It's just like, ripping the Band-Aid off quickly and just moving on. But of course, keep communicating with the school, ask for feedback as to how your child is doing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, here's a question. Thanks, Imeelia. I loved what you shared about children coming back to school. My child hasn't started yet and will be starting school soon at the Lorong Chuan campus, actually. Are you able to share some things that I can do to prepare my child? Okay, so this is someone that hasn't started school at all yet.
Right, great. Well, welcome to the Shaws family. We're excited to have you. Well, definitely, I think all of these tips that I've mentioned will apply to you as well, or any other new family starting in any other new school, right? But maybe in addition to that, I'd say try and visit the school, get your child familiar with the environment, even the way that you're getting to school. Your child needs to see the physical building of the school. That will really help, because otherwise it remains an abstract concept in their mind, especially if it's his or her first school experience. And also your child needs to see that this is a place that you know and you trust. That's key. And then talk to your child about school, right? You can read some books showing children going to school for the first time, or books that reaffirm your love for them. These are meant to help to reassure your child in the process of separation. Maybe it could help if you could go onto our website or our Facebook page and show your child photos and videos of the Shaws children playing. We've got lots of those, children in messy play, showing the playground and all that. So that becomes it becomes less unfamiliar when your child actually comes into school, right? I think also what we do is, if you could tell us some of your children's favorite things, like if he or she has a favorite book or a song, our teachers can cleverly infuse that into the routine as well. Yeah. If you can, maybe also try to get the uniforms early. So it might be fun for your child to try putting on the uniform, try dressing up at home. Yeah, I think also in Shaws, when you do start, right, at least for the moment, we do ask that the first few days you take it a little slower. So maybe for 1 hour of school, in the first day, 2 hours the second day, and then so on. You keep it gradual before you ease them into a half day or a full day eventually.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we've got time for 2 more questions. Okay, this is quite a common question. I am worried how wearing a mask all day will affect the child's learning and well-being. What are your thoughts on this?
Okay. I think my direct answer would be it will not affect your child's learning and well-being in the long run. Okay, but I guess wearing a mask might affect how the children communicate at first, because they will not always be able to see the full facial expressions like smiles, but after a while the children will actually become more attentive, more perceptive to look at other visual cues, right, like your eyes and your eyebrows. They will be more attentive to listen up for tones of voice, for hand gestures. Plus, they don't actually put on the mask the whole day. They have breaks in between when they're having their meals, if they have a nap. And if they are uncomfortable with wearing the mask, I think the teachers will manage that individually, one-on-one. We can also switch to the face shields if that's necessary. But I think as adults, we need to perhaps weigh our options, right? This is striking a balance and also shifting our mindset to think of masks not as something restrictive, yeah, but as something that is empowering. Wearing the mask allow us to step out of the house, right? Wearing a mask allow us to be in the company of other people and go back to our own way of life, like going to work, going on the bus, going to school. So see it as something that is meant to liberate us and protect us from the virus, not as something that's meant to be restrictive. Now, I think this is a fair concern. Many parents have shared with us before starting school, but I think 99% of our children, after coming back, and we've seen this over the past 2 weeks, that it's really not a big deal at all. You know, the children are very comfortable in their mask. It became their new normal. And parents came back to us saying that, you know, I don't know why I worried so much. So if that assures you, I hope it does.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've heard the same feedback as well from new starters who were a little bit concerned, but have come back with, you know, very, very happy that they made the decision to join. So, okay, thanks, Amy. That's great. Okay, last question for everyone. This is our last question for today. Thank you very much for those of you who sent in your questions. We will make sure to go ahead and get back to you as well. So I'm sorry if we couldn't fit you in today. But thank you for joining us on a Saturday. So we wanted to keep it kind of brief for you today. Would it be easier to ease my child back with 3 days a week rather than 5 days a week?
No, absolutely not. Well, I am a firm believer that children need routine. So really, if you were to ask me, you should send them in for 7 days a week. But jokes. I think giving them a more consistent routine and starting it right will actually make settling in easier for them. So I would really definitely say go with 5 days a week and not 3. Because if it's 3 days a week, it's sort of confusing for the children. Like, I'm in school and then I'm not. And then I'm in school again and then I'm not. So it doesn't give them the realistic expectation. And in my experience of being in the field for so many years, it is normal for parents to worry about, you know, settling the child in, separation anxiety. But at the end of the day, all of our children settle. They will take their time, some longer, some shorter. But yeah, just be confident and go for it. I'd say 5 days.
Thank you. Thank you, Imeelia. Always such thorough and reassuring answers, so thank you. So for those of you, we hope that that joined us today, thank you. And we also hope that you can join us on Thursday afternoon at 4 o'clock for our next talk in the series with Kit Kamak, who's our cluster principal. And Kit is going to be speaking about how we keep our children safe at Shaws. And she was a parent herself that returned to school at Shaws after SARS. So she has experienced closures and reopening the school as well. So we hope you've enjoyed yourself and got some great tips. And we look forward to seeing you on our next talk. And everyone have a wonderful Saturday and a great weekend ahead. Thank you again, Imeelia.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.